So just before we start this podcast, I'd like to say a huge thanks again to Mark Pitcher at smashthebox.me. Mark has been a long-time friend and also been on the podcast to tell his story about leaving corporate life and following his dream and his purpose, which has been Smash the Box. Smash the Box is a new way for you to train, motivate and inspire your staff. So by hiring Mark, you'll be improving your culture and really giving back something to your teams that will help them in their daily roles and their daily life. Mark has a really refreshing approach in terms of how people can actually find their purpose, their personal purpose and their business purpose. And it will make your culture a much stronger and much more aerodynamic organisation. You can experience Smash the Box in 3 ways. You can have a workshop with Mark who can train your GMs and your AGMs, etc., all the way through to your rising stars and teach them things like how to become an amazing leader, how to find purpose and fulfillment in the work, and also the power of positivity, all about that positive mental attitude. You can also get one-to-one coaching with Mark, whether you're an executive or for your teams, and again, really helping light that inner spark that's in all of us. Also, Mark is an amazing keynote speaker, whether you'd like to get him for your event. He's also an amazing warm-up act for any cold rooms that's maybe about to get serious, but also a great keynote speaker in his own right for you to hire him to come in and inspire all of your teams and colleagues. You can get a taster of Mark every single morning on Smash the Box Facebook Live. That's 7:45 every single morning on Facebook. Mark has a daily morning dose of inspiration for everyone, and he's building quite a sizable positive community on there. Definitely try and check that out. Also, please do get in touch with Mark at smashthebox.me or follow Mark Pitcher and Smash the Box on LinkedIn. From We Are Spectacular, this is a Spectacular Marketing Podcast, a podcast about everything brand, marketing, digital and social for the food, drink and hospitality industry and beyond. So this morning I had the pleasure of waking up in the Georgian House Hotel in Pimlico, ran by an amazing chap that you may know called Adam Rowledge. Adam and the team there are so customer centric, and everything from when you arrive, you get greeted with a smile, they remember your name, they're asking lots of nice questions about how your day's been, just all the simple things that really count. All the way to then when you get up to your room, there's always a handwritten card, some lovely message to really sort of make you feel at home, and also some great gifts. So everything from Dominic Ansel Cronuts to incredible English country wine to last night Peggy portion cupcakes. The only sad thing is that I'm on my own, so I might have to leave one behind for the calories and all that stuff. But again, when you go round the room, everything is designed to make your stay as frictionless as possible. From the hairdryer to the coffee machine to the way the bed's made, absolutely everything you can think of, they've really thought about the customer first. Today's guest is an amazing customer first advocate as well, called Martin Newman. Martin and I have known each other for a few years now and fellow jocks, so sorry about the colloquialisms that might happen in the next hour. But myself and Martin have always got on great, and although he's a huge Celtic fan and I'm more in the Kilmarnock camp, we're always trying our best to meet up together, share best practices, and also always trying to work together if we can. Martin also has just written a book which is called 100 Practical Ways to Improve Customer Experience. That's available on Amazon and all good bookshops, and I can't recommend buying this enough. So if you've got a spare £17-18, it's definitely worth thinking about, especially around about Christmas too. So Martin has also written this with one of his partners, an amazing chap also called Malcolm MacDonald. Definitely worth a read, and lots of our clients have read it already and have been in touch with me saying, A, how can I meet this guy? And B, how can we best put this into practice? So over the next hour, Martin and I talk about customer centricity an awful lot, and also what you can do to practically make your business customer first. It gives me the most Caledonian amount of pleasure ever to introduce my next guest, which is the incredible businessman and author, Mr. Martin Newman.
Well, what can I say, Mark? Never had an introduction like that before.
It's true.
I'm very humbled.
a legend, a rock star.
Thank you.
So chuffed to have you in the podcast. It's taken a wee while because you're the busiest man in, I was going to say Europe, but
in
probably
Busyville.
the globe. Yeah.
Busiest man in Busyville.
So it's going well. There's also a public health warning on this that it's two jocks from roughly the same area saying the same thing. So we might need subtitles or slow it down or something like this. So apologies in advance. But I'm so glad you could join me today in very Christmassy Fitzrovia today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a bit chilly out there, but better that than the rain that we've been having of late.
Yeah, and then we've been having a bit of feedback on plastics and single-use stuff, so we've been doing our best to have mugs and glasses and
quite right too.
All these things. So yeah. And I was in Leon this morning, and they've got a new initiative saying, do you have any allergies? So they'll ask you straight out, and then they've got like a badge, like Apu and the Quickie Mart saying, no, ask me about my pickles or whatever. So I thought that was quite a smart move. And, I think it was maybe first day yesterday. Yep. So getting a bit of feedback on that. So, yeah.
I was just thinking, actually, why don't restaurants and food establishments encourage consumers to bring in their own packaging? There'd be an idea, and they could discount, what you're buying by the cost of the packaging. For example, that'd be a neat little piece of social responsibility, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a good shout because we there's a few salad companies out there. Certainly, I think they do it in America with Sweet Green, where you take your own salad box sort of thing. Yeah. So no, I think that's got to be the next thing, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But made of something else, unicorn tears or whatever. I don't know, something not plastic, yeah. That's for sure. So we've known each other for 5 or 6 years. More.
I think more maybe. Than that, probably. Yeah. I think more like 7 or 8.
Yeah. So always good to see another Scotsman doing well down here. So that's a good thing. We're slightly polar opposites on the football scene. So you're a massive Celtic fan.
I am indeed.
Congratulations on your new cup that you just won.
Thank you. Seventh one in the trot, I think.
Oh, there we go. Not too shabby. And then I'm coming out of the mighty Killy. So yeah, we're flying high too.
Doing very well, third in the league.
Yes.
Fantastic
so
performance.
Not too bad. But it's funny with that because it swings to you're either a little Celtic fan or a little Rangers fan, depending on who's at the top or who's in the team, so you can never win. It's just it's always bad. So you brilliantly had an amazing agency called Practicology, and you founded that.
That's right.
And on Newman Street, which I thought was like the cleverest thing in the world, named after you. I thought that must have raised a smile.
It did. At the same time, I was living in a road called Newman's Way, believe it or not. I know people thought my ego had really got the better of me, but that wasn't the case. I can assure you, it was just coincidental. When we were looking, our first office was in Wardour Mews in Soho. Actually, it started in my house. Then we went to Wardour Mews, and then when we were looking to upscale, we just found somewhere nearby in Newman Street. Yeah. Obviously, the fact I had my name on it kind of drew me there in the first place. But it was quite amusing.
So
at the time.
Tell us, because you've had a fascinating story up till then as well. So tell us a wee potted, how you got to Practicology and what happened.
Sure. I've worked in retail more or less my whole career. I mean, I have spent a bit of time in other sectors. I've been in travel for a bit. I've worked in ad agencies as well. But, a lot of my experience has been in the client side. I left school, didn't go to university, started my father's retail optical business in Glasgow. He had a few practices. So I was doing basically some very rudimentary marketing when optics was being deregulated in the 1980s. Spent a bit of time in the sports trade. I was a marketing director for a couple of big sports retailers, Intersport and a company called Sports Connection, who at one point were about the 5th largest.
Shout out to Greavesies in Glasgow.
I shout out Sandy Greaves is a man I know very well, and Greaves is a great business.
That's where I used to go on the football strips.
Yeah, well, I used to. Actually, when I was an independent consultant in Glasgow, they were one of my clients, so I've got a very good relationship there. Amazing. Actually, I was sitting at my desk in 1997 in Glasgow in Hillington Industrial Estate when I was head of marketing for Sports Connection.
A grand place to be.
Grand place to be. And I'd never even switched on a computer in my life, right? I had a big computer box on my desk. And one day I was chasing a document that my PA was typing up for me, and I stuck my head out the door to ask where it was, and she was online. And I said, show me this web stuff. I've heard about it. And while you're at it, maybe you can give me a bit of an education with my, my computer, show me how to send an email and all the rest of it. And I suppose it was a bit of a mini light bulb moment, because I realised that in terms of technology, I was in danger of becoming a laggard because I wasn't really embracing it. So I was worried about the impact on my career of not embracing it. And then my instinct said the web was the way things were going to go. And not long after that, I actually set up a website in Glasgow. I set up a business in Glasgow, rather. I set up a website for Sports Connection, but then I set up my first service providing business, and we were building websites and doing a bit of very early digital marketing. Made a bit of money and lost a bit of money, so crashed and burned in the .com. But fantastic experience, which undoubtedly helped to make me successful second time around with Practicology. I wanted to continue my involvement in digital, so I then started doing some independent consulting, and Greaves was one of my clients. But really, I kind of missed the client side, and so I was looking for an opportunity to get back into retail, and I landed a role in London to head up home shopping for Harrods. So I came down here with my family, relocated in 2004, and basically went through a succession of quite high-profile roles. So I started at Harrods, then I went to a company called Pentland Brands. That was an interim role, multi-brand owner, I'm sure you know well, Speedo, Berghaus and all the rest. I was interim director of e-commerce there. I was then Burberry's first head of e-commerce in Europe, and then latterly at Ted Baker, I was head of online. And those experiences really set me up for what I was about to do after that, because my instinct told me that there was a gap in the market for a service providing business that was packed full of people who had been there and done it. I've met and worked with lots of consulting practices, and I can't help thinking that it's great hiring people with brains the size of a planet, but if they got no real world experience, arguably the recommendations they make are not always the most practical or relevant for client businesses. So I just thought there was an opportunity there to plug that gap, and I started Practicology, and the brand, I got a bit lucky with the brand because I was looking for something that described the combination of the practical experience with the science of the strategy, and that was the ology bit.
I always think about the BT.
Absolutely.
Get an ology.
Yeah.
But I think, and we did a tiny bit of brand work together, and, whichever way you kicked at the name, it was right.
Yeah,
it was really bulletproof. So I think I was.
It's interesting. It's people definitely don't forget it, and I think it brings a smile to people's faces. Unfortunately, the odd smart arse does tell me it sounds a bit too much like proctology.
I've never thought about that.
So there you go. Yeah. But I occasionally, smart arse being the operative word. So I occasionally make a joke out of that. But the brand has stood the test of time, and people do remember it. And I think we've done a pretty good job in the business for given our relative small size compared to the big players that are out there in building brand awareness. And I don't think there's anybody better known, particularly in the retail space. And within FMCG, which is another of the sectors that we tend to sort of spend a lot of time in. Yeah,
I mean, you're the only ones that I know of that, I can hand on heart pass a client to and go, you need to go and speak to these guys, And how many years?
9 years.
9.
So I set the business up in 2009.
Yeah,
and I don't know whether you know the news, I think you do, but we were acquired actually a couple of months ago by a US business called iServe. So that's been a bit of a game changer. It is actually going to lead to me sadly leaving the business. Well, I think it's probably the right thing to do for me in my career. And also I was smart enough to put a succession plan in place. So there's a great CEO running the business now.
Yep.
And I look forward to seeing how that develops, and then on to some pastures new for me next year.
Excellent. So some pastures new then is the book.
Yes.
So real fun stuff in that. When I saw it, I just thought, you clever man, well done for doing that, because I think there's a book in me somewhere too, and I just was so pleased that you'd done it. I was just like, oh, he's done it great. The other thing was talking to a client lately, and phones up and he's going, God, I've just I've read this amazing book. You've got to read it. And 100 customers like, is that Martin's book? He was like, yeah. So I think we set up you going to meet him at some point. I don't know if you have already.
Yeah, we have.
Oh, excellent. So, and I think this is what people are looking for. Again, going back to Practicology name, they're looking for the practical stuff.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think you've nailed that with this, you know,
Thank you.
100 rule guide sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I guess I am a fairly practical person, right? I built a business called Practicology, and I wrote a book called 100 Practical Ways to Improve Customer Experience.
Yeah.
So the clue's in the name.
Yeah.
And it is, and I think what people seem to like about it is that they can dip in and out of it, and it's also very easy, it's very straightforward. I think it's a good book to read. I think there's a good mix of, I suppose, my own experiences and anecdotes, as well as, you know, interviewing some key people. I had the privilege, I don't know whether you know this or not, I had the privilege of interviewing the guy who designed the first Apple store, a guy called Tim Kobe. And I've actually got on my laptop, I've got the white paper or the business case that he took to Steve Jobs to convince him to open a store. This is 1996. Because at that time, Apple had none of their own physical retail outlets. They were all selling, you know, they were selling through other people's channels of distribution. And Tim said, you know, you need to take control of the brand because you can't control how the brand's displayed, how it's marketed, how they price it. And if you want it to be a premium brand, you need to take control of your own destiny. So, you know, there's some really great examples, I think, within the book. But fundamentally, at its heart, it is a practical guide. I am very passionate about putting customers at the heart of everything that you do. And my frustration has been that I think we've talked about this for a heck of a long time, probably as far back as I can remember, at least the last 20 years, but I don't really see many businesses delivering it because I don't actually think they really understand what it means. And that's what I wanted to write a book about. I wanted to talk about the disruption that's going on in all of the different industries, whether it's, you know, Uber, Just Eat, or whether it's Amazon, or whether it's Airbnb. You know, every consumer sector is being disrupted. And I wanted to actually almost provide a framework for established businesses to do something about that, to understand how to take advantage of that disruption, but also how to defend themselves against it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the only way to really defend is to do everything you can to wrap your arms around your customers.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, then it's going to be all too easy for them to buy from someone else who arguably might have a more convenient, you know, and more effective value proposition.
So just digging into the disruption thing a bit
Yep.
more, I mean, when we're looking at food and drink, you've mentioned a couple already, but, you know, what do you think it is that they're doing, and what do you think the bricks and mortar businesses should be doing? You know, how does
Sure.
that play out?
Well, I mean, obviously there has been quite a lot of disruption, and I think the whole kind of Uber Eats, Just Eat model is having quite a big impact. It's not helping everyone, it's helping some people. And I think that casual dining, as an example, as a category, you know, just like core retail, is having a bit of a tough time at the moment. And I don't really think they've fully embraced yet the established players in that space. I don't think they've really fully embraced the opportunity that digital provides. I mean, just to be clear, you know, the technology and digital for me are not the starting point. They're the enabler.
Yeah.
But it's understanding customer behavior and understanding how you can leverage digital to drive that behavior and drive the change that you're looking for. So, for example, one of the things that I think we're going to see a lot more of in the next few years is proximity marketing. Most of the people I've talked to in the last, 5 years, when you talk about mobile, I've always felt that, you know, targeting consumers on mobile is too invasive. But then we do everything on mobile. You know, we spend, you know, however many hours every day now, you know.
Apparently 220 minutes average.
Well, there you go.
Apparently.
Pretty sure I'm a bit higher than that.
Yeah,
but
I'm way higher. I'm not the average.
you know, social media, calls, work, you know, emails, buying stuff, booking restaurants, you know, you name it, right? So we live in our devices. They become a part of us in a way. And I think with that in mind, you know, if you're a consumer, and I mean, I guess thinking about when people book a restaurant, I suppose it falls into one of two mindsets. You know, you either plan it because you know you're going out on Saturday night and you want to make sure you get a table at your favorite restaurant, or it's spontaneous. You're out and about, you may be doing a bit of shopping, you're meeting somebody for lunch, whatever it happens to be, and you're looking to be inspired. You know, you're in that moment of where you're about to make your mind up. So I think proximity marketing is a great marketing tool to capture consumers' demand at that moment of intent when they're thinking of making an acquisition or thinking of booking somewhere to eat. So I think we'll see a lot more of that. I also get frustrated, you know, even basic things like when I'm in a restaurant, you know, I think it's still it's kind of the way it's always been. You know, there aren't many places where, for example, they're leveraging technology in that environment to make it easier for you. I always think it's a bit embarrassing when you have to stick your hand up, right? Or, you know, try to get the waiter's attention. I mean...
Giraffing, I believe it's called.
Giraffing. Ah, very good.
Yeah, apparently.
Sticking your neck up.
Sticking your neck up and having a look round. And,
yeah, exactly. And you know, I think more often than not, a lot of food and drink establishments are underserved. They're under-resourced. There's not enough people in there in the first place to serve you, and therefore, you know, it can be a challenge. And I suppose the cause and effect of that is, if I were a restaurant owner or a bar owner, you know, I'd want to know, you know, how many more drinks, how many more desserts might I sell if I empowered consumers with the ability to make decisions on their own and not wait to be served by somebody, maybe too infrequently. So I think in that way, you know, what could you do with technology to actually empower customers and enable them to, you know, have a better experience, which ultimately will be more commercially rewarding for your business.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, what's interesting as well is about what do you do? So let's say you are, I don't know, Café Rouge, you know, whoever else, you know, Witherspoons, Fuller's, you know, name your thing. You know, what do you do to make the first step to that, you know, sort of digital organisational structure? Because, you know, you can't go too far the other way and throw everything out and all the rest of it. But I don't get, and this is back to the Gary Vaynerchuk podcast that we did with him, you know, I just don't get why we're not more digitally savvy as an industry. I know all the industries, but for us, I'm just thinking, I don't know what that tipping point's going to be for people to really get it.
Yeah. So unfortunately for some people, it's too late.
Right.
Excuse me. They get it when they've gone out of business.
Right.
You've got to move quickly, right? Because this space is moving so fast. But I don't think it's about having necessarily a digital person in the business. It's about having somebody who understands customers.
Yeah.
And that's the starting point, because if you've got, I mean, first of all, you need to have a mandate from the top of the business. So whoever owns the organisation, you know, whether it's a private company, a listed company, a private equity owned business, you know, they have to have a mandate from the leadership, the ownership of that business, to say, we've got to do something to become more customer centric. I would then suggest that you do have somebody who has responsibility for defining what that customer experience needs to be through all the different channels and all the different touch points of the business. But one person on their own is not enough to drive the transformation required. And where I think a lot of businesses fall down, even when they bring somebody in and call them, you know, the chief customer officer or give them, you know, ownership of the customer experience, is that person then has to get their other colleagues that own the other parts of the business on board. And that's difficult, because at the end of the day, they've got their own, you know, they've got their own mandate, right? And they're being measured more often than not on different things. So I think the way to drive that transformation is to have all of the business unit owners. So, you know, for example, it could be the restaurant manager, it could be the head of operations, it could be the chief technology officer, it might even be the HR director, whoever defines what the menu is and the food choices and the drinks, you know, getting all these people together along with that person that owns the customer, and making sure that everyone's got shared key performance indicators and everyone's being incentivized accordingly as well. I think if you do that, then you get everyone working and moving in the same direction. Otherwise, you have one person trying to push water uphill, because although everybody else thinks it's a good idea, they're not actually being rewarded or incentivized or measured on those metrics. Therefore, why would you bother? You know, you're going to focus on the things that you make your bonus on, or that you're being judged, you know, your performance is being judged against.
I think that's a great point. And also, you know, it's like that one person clapping thing, you know, and I think we are doing it the wrong way, where we're, you know, hiring someone under 25 because they know social. And also, it might be worth touching on digital, what digital means to you, because you've alluded to it with what you're going through, but I think people are seeing it as one thing or another, or is it, you know, it's website, or I've got a single customer view, and it's like, so I mean, what are all the considerations, you know? I
think it's a good question. I mean, one of the things I often talk about, we use a lot of industry jargon, and I often refer to it as BS bingo. You know, we talk about omni-channel, we talk about digital transformation. In retail, there's a new term now, which is unified retail. I mean, the issue I have with all of these terms at the end of the day is that if you went, it's to your point really, if you went across 100 different businesses and you asked 10 different people in each business what each of those terms meant, you get basically however many, 1,000 or 10,000 different answers. Yeah. So if people don't generally understand, if there isn't a common framework for what these things mean, then how can that be a sensible strategy for businesses to adopt? Yeah. It has to be about the customer. It has to be about customer-centric transformation. Yeah. And if that was your starting point, I often say to businesses, think of yourself as a customer service business that just happens to sell stuff. Mm-hmm. So if you talk to your clients who are, hotels, restaurants and pubs and said, you're a customer service business. The byproduct of what you do is you sell meals or you sell alcohol. What would you do differently? And if you walked across each touch point of the business, I bet you'd find they would do a lot of things differently because they would have a different mindset. They wouldn't be product focused, they'd be customer focused. Yeah. So then digital, as I said, is an enabler. And at the end of the day, it does provide the opportunity to connect customers with your business, I think, in a way that, they would never have done before.
So actually the first point is, I'm just thinking about, staying in a hotel last night and all the rest of it. They need to experience their own product as a customer again and again and again.
It's a great point.
And then everything else is academic.
It's a great point. I often, when I go into our retail clients and I'll talk to the e-commerce team and I'll say, when was the last time you walked the floor, for example? Yeah. When was the last time you were in a physical retail environment and went in there, looked at how you merchandise, looked at customers, talked to customers in the store environment. Yeah. And they'll say to me, but that's not my customer. My customer's here online. And no. That is your customer. Your customers are multi-channel. And I think layering on what you just said, I think going through the customer journey when you're working in that business continually and actually trying to buy stuff. Yeah. That's what I used to do when I was running those businesses, online channels that I spoke about before. The best way of finding out whether everything's working is doing that. I used to buy stuff every day and return it and check on the service levels and how we were performing. Were we delivering on our promises? Did the search function work? Was there any issues in the checkout? What happened when I called the contact centre? Yeah. It's the best research you can ever do.
Well, back when I was at lastminute.com, so that's kind of mainly where I started life, if you like.
Yep.
Constant site test.
Yep.
Constant. So basically, you had almost this kind of like arrow of truth or something, I can't remember, but you got it past you, and then that was you were on site testing for an hour.
Yeah.
And you get it all the time where people just kind of go, it's just a glitch, or it's just a... I don't think people are hungry enough, and I don't think people take it serious enough. Another example would have been size, the shoe shop. So I went on and I was looking at this particular pair of trainers. So I'm a bigger guy, so the choice of clothes aren't always as great, but trainers and watches and ties, I suppose, and aftershave always fit. So I always was like, right, I'm going to go and get these. So it was these Nike Air Max SC2 things. So I couldn't believe they were still available, right? And it was a glitch in the search. Yeah. So I was I'm just going to try it anyway. So ordered them, comes back, and the shoe box, a day later that you'd paid extra for and all this stuff, was smaller than my laptop, right? So they came and my wife's going, oh, that's great, your trainers have came. And I was like, these won't even fit my hands, right? So I had a look and I thought, oh, maybe I've ordered the kids size because 13 or... Anyway, hadn't. Completely wrong SKU in the stockroom. Right. So then basically it was these patent sort of Air Jordan things. I was looking all bling or whatever.
Oh, I think you look great in those.
Oh, they just wouldn't fit. I need to cut my toes off. So anyway, long story short, returned them. I gave them a note in it saying this SKU's linked to something wrong. I then phoned them and told them. I then sent them an email and told them. I was like, I can't do, and on social media. 4 things, right? So then I thought, oh, maybe it's just a glitch. So I'll try it again. Waited a few weeks, did it again, same result.
Yeah.
And I know that was stupid of me, but you're just going, come on, guys.
Well, it's very frustrating, and of course the most frustrating thing for you is that they didn't do anything to fix it right after the first time.
And it ends up costing you money because it's costing you time.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think even today, retailers, restaurants, pretty much all consumer-facing businesses, they don't, and by and large, even get the basics right. And so when you talk about being truly customer centric, they've got an awful long way to go. Yeah. I mean, I often think restaurants, it's the same as most retailers. It's all push. There's no pull, right? So restaurants tell you what's available on the menu, right? Why does a restaurant not ask you, first of all, did you enjoy your meal today? Ratings and reviews like you get on a retail website. What would you, was there anything not on our menu that you would have really liked?
Yeah.
What sort of feedback have you got for us? Imagine how much you could improve your business if you were actually engaging with customers and getting that sort of feedback about how they felt about what they ate that day and everything, and getting their ideas. And because it's about engagement and it's about listening and it's about transparency. And I think the brands that do that are the brands that will really win in the long run. Yeah,
because the interesting is the operators are saying to us, like, they're not trusting TripAdvisor.
Right.
And I'm like, well, whether you believe it's fake or not, I think you've got to
take it on board.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And actually, they do tend to always talk about TripAdvisor. No one really talks about Google reviews or Facebook reviews. And that's going to be even more powerful in the future, right?
Yeah.
That will leapfrog.
Totally.
But yeah, I think you're right in that, some more intuitive, smarter questions coming back at you, especially the gap ones.
But
I think,
what
else could we have done today?
Yeah, exactly. But I think I'm not talking about that really in isolation. It's more that as part of an overall customer engagement strategy.
Sure.
So what do we do from every touch point to drive that type of engagement? I had, just very quickly, the best hotel experience I've ever had. I was fortunate enough, privileged actually, to be put up in the Mandarin Oriental in Hong Kong.
Nice.
I was flown over to do a presentation and a keynote over there about 3 years ago. And I went in. I've obviously not stayed in any posh hotels before because when I checked in, when I went to the reception desk, the person who checked me in took me to the room. I thought, well, I've never had that before.
Must be a posh hotel.
Exactly. Yeah. And he showed me around everything, told me where everything was, how everything worked. I thought, that's amazing. Anyway, I went out that night, and just before I'd gone out, I was trying to turn the telly on, and I thought maybe I'm just being daft here, but I couldn't get the telly to work for love or money. And I went out and I told the concierge, I said, no problem, leave it with us, sir. I came back and there was a typed letter on my bed from the engineer who had basically fixed the telly and said, really sorry, Mr. Newman, this is what went wrong. This is what I did about it. This is who I am. And this is where you can reach me if you have any more problems. And I was like, that is unbelievable. Yeah. Not only that, I'm looking around the room, my slippers are at the side of the bed. They've put cable ties around my laptop, cable and all my different charging devices. I mean, it was just class. And right the way through until I left the hotel, on the day that I left, 3 separate people said to me, the guy, the bellboy, if you like, the concierge and the reception desk said, now you haven't left anything in your safe, Mr. Newman, and you've got your passport. And I just thought, what a great example of a business that's basically gone through the customer journey and thought of every single eventuality and every touch point and what to do right. In fact, even another one I've forgotten about, when I stepped in the shower, all the buttons and the knobs were in the right places. The shower head was turned away, so that whether the water was too hot or too cold, it didn't bother you. You had your chance to get it to the right, temperature. It just everything was thought through, and I thought that was just a really great example. And unfortunately, not enough businesses are doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of staying in hotels a wee bit, and I was thinking to myself last night, am I really odd? Because I set myself up for the morning so that I'm out as quickly as possible. Yeah. And it is those types of things that is the shower head turned away. Is the temperature at the right thing? So I'm setting all that up the night before. I must have some sort of crazy OCD thing or something. But yeah, I'm really bad for that, like getting it all set out. Yeah. But I think that the turn down service with slippers is great, but having the cable ties on, that's
everything. It's just great, really great. Everything was so well thought through,
But then I suppose you're paying for it, right?
Well, thankfully somebody else is paying for it, but there you
go. So I guess, looking at then that offline business then, and I mean, what would you advise them to be like the first step, in digital? Is it something to do with customer, or is it social presence, digital presence? What would you think the first thing would be, the first step?
The very first step. Well, again, I'm always going to bring it back to the same thing, and that is understanding customers. Yeah. The first step is, do you actually have a good view of whom your most important segments of customers are? Lots of consumer businesses have quite a lot of data, but they have very little insight. So if you don't actually know who your customers are, then it's going to be pretty difficult to define the experience that they're looking for, and therefore what you need to do with technology, with people, with capabilities, with organizational structure, with processes and so on to deliver the right experience. So I would always start there. And I appreciate not every business, has, bundles of customer data. But that would be the starting point. I would be looking to acquire that in some shape or form if I didn't already have it, because that's going to give you the answers with regards to, I think, the journey and the path that you need to take. But, again, I suppose the premise of the question is you don't have to do everything at once, nor can you. So I think it's about looking for the low-hanging fruit. Again, I think there's always a big focus on investing in, lots of new technology or whatever it happens to be. But often there's a lot of simple things that you can do. How discoverable are you on Google? Do you... it's fairly old school, but from a search engine optimization point of view, when people key in the name of your hotel or restaurant, do you appear? Where are you?
Yeah, I mean, this is huge because there's so many people that we meet and all the rest of it, and it's like, I need a website, or I need my new website done, whatever, right? What's your budget? This. But they're only thinking that's the budget to get it done. Not thinking about SEO at all. Like zero. And then on top of that, there's the things like just tidying up your backyard in Google, which is, coffee near me, pub near me.
Absolutely. Everyone searches near, everyone searches near me now. That's all I do. Whenever I'm looking for anything, it's always near me. I want to know, based on where I am at that moment in time, what's the nearest place for me to go to? What are the nearest places? So 100%.
Well, I guess, so, SEO, PPC, social presence, all that kind of stuff. But also optimization. Like, if there's no people doing very little doing SEO well, the people that are actually sitting thinking forensically like you do every day, and I did back at lastminute.com, optimization. What's the bounce rate,
Well, optimization of everything at the end of the day. Optimization of the website, the customer journey, driving conversion, whether you're not, even if you're not selling something online, obviously if you're a restaurant nowadays, most of your bookings are going to come from some form of digital channel, whether that's through an open table, or whether that's through your own website, or whatever. I mean, I'm sure the customers are still phoning up, but most of those touch points are digital in some shape or form. Optimizing all of that. I think the other thing I just want to mention is that one of the things that consumer businesses do extremely poorly, again, whether you're a retailer, an automotive brand, a financial, a bank, a restaurant, hotel, is retention. Everyone focuses on acquisition. Everyone focuses on the top of the funnel, and hardly anybody focuses on what happens next. And you may have read in the book that I'm not a huge fan of the traditional marketing mix, the 4 Ps: product, price, place, promotion, which was then extended to people, process, and physical evidence. The reason being that the people talks about people in the business, and whilst obviously colleagues or people in the business are hugely important, the one most obvious thing missing from the marketing mix is customers. And this was a framework that was created in the US in the 1960s. I don't think
Kotler.
I don't think it was intended for retailers. I don't think it was intended for restaurants. It was intended for fast-moving consumer good brands. But fundamentally, it doesn't. I don't think it works in this day and age the way it might do. And so I created what I call the customer mix, or the 6 Ws. And the 2 additions to that, apart, I've got things in there like, where do people want to buy? When do they want to buy? Who are the customers? Who are the customers? And it's never one customer. It's who are the segments of customers. And then you can start to drill into the experience they're looking for. But also the last W is what's next. If I give you my money, if I buy a meal, if I stay in your hotel, what happens afterwards? What's in it for me? How do you make my life easier? How do you make it so rewarding that I want to come back here? How are you building and maintaining that relationship with me? Car dealers, car brands, the ones that really do my head in. You buy a car. Most people buy a car on a contract, right? PCP, some form of loan or contract. So, I have my cars for 4 years. So you get the car, you might get an email in the early stages. And then you probably don't hear from them again. And if you've got a high-end car, you might get a magazine every other month, or you might get the odd invite to a track event or something. And then eventually, about 2 months before your contract's up, you might get an email or a call from the dealer. It's too late. What happened to the other 4 years? And not only that, but why are they not asking me about who else is in my life? I'm married. I've got kids. Both my kids have got cars. My wife's got a car. Who else in my family might I be able to introduce to them? Or friends, for that matter. They're just not thinking big enough. Most of these models, I think, are still largely broken. They're the way they're the way they've been for the last 50 years, and they're not taking advantage of the opportunity with digital technology nowadays to really build relationships, with customers, and ensure that when you are thinking about renewing your car, that's the first place and the first brand you're going to think of.
Because they've looked after you all that time.
Correct.
And I think something I'm always sort of imploring our hospitality clients to do is think like a retailer or an e-tailer more. So I think, something the guys could start looking into is maybe looking at, Amazon shop, for example. What goods do I have that got there?
Totally.
So, I mean, what about Amazon shop then? What you see with that?
Well, what I would say is, if you've been to a restaurant and you've had a good meal, how about you can sell me the ingredients, the recipe, that I might actually also be able to have that at home when I want to. Is that really going to cannibalise? Is that going to stop me coming to the restaurant? I doubt it, because you don't just go to a restaurant for the meal, you go for the experience, right? And you go for the companionship of the people that you're eating with. But what might you be able to do that would enable you to extend again the relationship with me as a customer in that sense? I mean, Amazon and marketplaces are, certainly here to stay, and are a route to market without a shadow of a doubt, and give you the reach potentially of obviously an enormous customer base. So certainly worth looking at for smaller businesses. There are many tens of thousands of small businesses that generate over £1 million a year now, selling merchandise of some description on Amazon. And these are businesses that are started in people's bedrooms, or the back of their house at the end of the day, in their conservatory or whatever. So there's no question in my mind there are opportunities there. But, whether that's, as I say, whether that's maybe selling more traditional merchandise. I mean, you could be selling all sorts of branded merchandise, from mugs to plates to, apparel for that matter, if somebody really liked the brand. But I think if you stuck initially to the core product that you're selling, given that people are coming in to eat a meal, if they really like the food, why not give them the chance to buy or essentially make that meal at home with the right ingredients or the recipe book or whatever?
Well, I think there's only a few that have done it well. So there's a lot of beer brands, for example, have done the merch thing well. So, and also, I guess they've got a physical product that you can, buy. But again, a lot of them aren't even, on Amazon, or they're not selling it through Amazon. They're selling it through their own website. And I find that really weird, in the sense that I'd put it on Amazon before I'd put it on my own website. Well,
they're going to, absolutely. I mean, they're going to generate a lot more footfall and traffic and sales on Amazon than they will do on their own website, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I bigger, more established retail brands always have that dichotomy of, if I go on Amazon, I mean, I think marketplaces it's an interesting one. The term marketplace in itself has probably got a little bit of a kind of, dirty, grubby sort of innuendo, if you like, when it's not really like that or about that at all. But that's the perception that some brands have. But the real, and I think the other question is, I suppose, or the other concern that some brands have is partly being in that environment. What does that mean for my brand? But also cannibalization. I would say for the vast majority of brands, cannibalization is not going to be an issue. Don't get ahead of yourself, because the reality is you're going to reach a heck of a lot more people than are ever going to be interested in coming to you directly. But they might be interested in the products that you sell, and therefore they'll find you on Amazon. And also, just talking about where consumers find and search for products now, as a rule of thumb, something like 50 to 55% of all product searches in the UK nowadays start on Amazon. So
it's
actually,
like the Google of products, right?
Correct. So there are more people now search for a physical product on Amazon than they do on Google, and therefore, if you're not there, then you're almost immediately saying, well, actually, half the population, I'm not really interested in your business. So I think if you think of it in those terms, then you would probably take a different view.
Well, I think, to be fair though, a couple of shout outs though, people who, Carluccio's were one of the first that actually had products that then you could go and buy. I thought they did an incredible job of that. I think they could have done more digitally, but they were good at that. And then Leon, I was in this morning, they've got a kind of homeware range, and they've got the cookbooks and stuff. So again, they were quite forward thinking in that. The one that's I'm loving at the moment is Soho House's website.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's got to be a gold mine for e-commerce. You can buy pretty much everything that's in Soho House.
Yeah.
So, no matter where it is. So the ashtray, the whiskey glass,
Sure. Well, I think that's obviously they've created a great brand, an aspirational brand.
Yeah.
And if you've experienced Soho House, then there's a high likelihood that you might want to just have take a bit of that and have a bit of that in your life. Whether that is an ashtray, whether that is a branded mug or towels or whatever it happens to be. So absolutely, I think there's lots of opportunity. I think hotel groups are recognising, the opportunity also, particularly the higher end hotel groups, to sell their merchandise. You've been in the hotel, you love the sheets on the bed, you love the fluffiness of the towels, the softness of the towels. Let me buy them. Yeah. I quite like them in my own environment.
I'm a sucker for an ironing board. I always think irons and ironing boards in hotels are like way better than anywhere in the world. Yeah. Right. I'm always thinking.
I was wondering why I keep seeing you leaving a hotel with an ironing board under your arm.
Going surfing.
I mean, it's one thing. Exactly, it's one thing taking soap from the shower, but you got to leave the ironing board.
It's a very big suitcase. Yeah. So what about? Thinking on the sort of kinder side of the street as well. So being customer centric now, social responsibility.
Yes.
What's going on there?
Well, I'm very passionate about that. And it's not something, I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you, it's something that, I've been fully aware of or have embraced for my entire life. My wife actually is the one that's really led me into it. She hasn't taken a plastic bag from a supermarket now for probably the best part of 10 years. Wow. And, we've got all sorts of recycling bins in the house and have had for as long as I can remember. It's probably taken me, in fact, she still has to tell me probably on a weekly basis that I end up putting things in the wrong recycling bin. But, I'm trying my best. I think the problem, the issue I have, again, it's a bit around the parlance. People still talk about corporate social responsibility. The problem I have with that as a terminology is that the emphasis is on the corporate. And when a business has a CSR policy, in my mind, it's no more than a tick box exercise.
It's totally a tick box exercise.
It's like what's the minimum we can do to satisfy, whether it's shareholders, whether it's regulators, whether it's customers, the public at large, whatever it is. What do we think the minimum is that we can get away with? And that just doesn't cut it. I've got two kids, 17 and 22, both millennials. That demographic are so hot on social responsibility. And I think if you think of it as social responsibility, that's what it's about. What are you doing to be socially responsible? And that can manifest itself in lots of different ways. So if you are a restaurateur, where are you getting your products from? Where are you getting your ingredients from? What does that supply chain look like? And the people that you're buying your produce from, your raw ingredients, how are they treating their staff? Yeah. Are they looking after them? Is it slave labor? Are they paying them a minimum wage or not? Yeah. You really need to be looking across every element of your business. It's not just about packaging. It goes much further and much deeper than that. And I don't think enough businesses take that seriously. And I really do believe that, again, I think, there are some examples of brands out there. If you think of, for example, Tom's, the whole buy one, give one model has been very effective for them. But, it genuinely has a payback, right? Because you buy a pair of shoes, you as a consumer feel that you're doing good because they're going to give a pair of shoes to somebody who can't afford a pair of shoes in a third world country. Yeah. Warby Parker, the opticians in the States, same thing. Buy a pair of glasses, or spectacles from them, and they'll give a pair of glasses to somebody that can't afford glasses. Yeah. So I think there's lots of things that you can do, but it needs to be genuine. I would always urge against thinking of it as a marketing initiative. It's got to be something, you've got to be transparent about it.
Yeah.
Your customers have got to know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's got to have a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And also, I think that you've got to live and breathe what you preach and practice it. And I think that not enough businesses that even have CSR or social responsibility initiatives ensure that their own colleagues are living and breathing it in their daily lives, whether that's in the work environment or whether that's in their own life.
Yeah.
You know, so encouraging them to get involved with things in the community, you know, that they can help out with. I think there's so many things that you can do. And I think it's one of these things that, in a way, businesses that treat it as a tick box exercise perceive it as a cost rather than a benefit.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the whole concept of putting the customer at the heart of everything you do.
Yeah.
Businesses haven't really still in the main understood the value of doing that and the risk of not doing it.
Yeah.
And that's where the disruptors come in.
Yeah.
Because they recognize, you know, let's take the most simple, I always use the example of Uber, right? You know, ordering a taxi. What was the most frustrating thing with ordering a taxi in the old world? Well, first of all, you didn't know when it was actually going to get there. They'd tell you it'd be 10 or 15 minutes, but you'd never really know. And you might be in a hurry, right? So that's frustrating because you're not in control of that situation. Then you get in the taxi and you've got no idea how long it's going to take you to get where you're going to.
Yep.
Nor do you know how much it's going to cost.
Yep.
And of course, being Scottish and cynical, and as someone who's probably been taken around the houses a few times in cities that I wasn't familiar with, and charged a ridiculous amount, you know, you're not really in control of that either. So along came Uber. You order an Uber, you know exactly when it's going to turn up, you know exactly how much it's going to cost, and you know exactly how long it's going to take you to get there and what route they're taking.
Yeah.
You are completely empowered as a customer. And that, again, is really what it's all about.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you say purpose as well. You know, we've been sort of doing a few, you know, quite a lot of brand work lately, and we've been sort of talking to companies about that very thing. And it's either been when we've been looking at employee engagement stuff, but also when we've been looking at brand stuff as well. And then you're saying, what's your purpose? And then, you know, the client will maybe say, well, you know, we sell coffee or we sell, and it's like, no, that's what you do. What's the purpose? And if you don't have one, can we work to try and find one that is genuine?
Sure.
So, you know, a lot of people talk about Toms and this and that, but it's what's right for you.
Yeah.
And then how does that link? And also the other thing is, how does that link back to what you do as a business?
Sure.
Because I think, you know, when we were at, you know, lastminute.com again, for example, you know, not that it was a problem, it was a very good thing to do, noble thing to do, you know, but we supported NSPCC. But I always thought, how does the brand get credit or payback for having that as a, you know, as a bit of both?
Well, I think nowadays, I think back then you were obviously quite an early adopter as a business in that sense. But, you know, I think, you know, I suppose the payback is that most, as I say, millennials and I think most customers now, generally, most consumers are so aware of it that I think it has become part of the consideration that you make as a consumer about whether you're going to actually buy from a particular consumer-facing entity, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's an automotive dealer, a car brand, a bank, a retailer, or whatever it is. I really think now that's part of the decision-making process that a lot of consumers go through. And so the payback is you get the conversion, you get the demand, you get the business. And if you do it properly and genuinely and you're transparent about it, you know, even if you're not doing everything today that you would like to do, but you tell customers, you know, we're on this journey. We're not exactly where we want to be yet. We don't have 100% plastic-free packaging. We don't have, you know, whatever it happens to be, but we're on that path and we're aiming to get there by March 2020. I think customers will buy into that because you're being transparent, you're being open with them. And I think it's when you don't do that, people think that you've got something to hide, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, you know, thinking about lastminute.com thing, it was just always in my mind that the payback would have been greater if it was a charity we all believed in.
Sure.
You know, and it linked to the brand.
Yeah.
You know? So again, you're saying, you know, in terms of it all coming from everyone, it kind of was picked at the top level, and it's like, that's a charity that, you know, get on with it. And not that's a bad thing, it was great work we did and all that, but I think if it came from the people, and there was something around the purpose.
Or maybe one of the ways of I agree with that. I think maybe one of the ways of overcoming that is having multiple charities and letting your colleagues choose which one do you want to support. Right, we're all going to run the marathon. We're all going to sleep out rough for one night. You know, we're going to serve in a food kitchen. You know, whatever it is you undertake as a business. You know, you could all be doing the same thing, but you could all be essentially supporting different entities in the process.
Yeah, no, I think
and maybe letting people choose, you know.
I think that would work well. Well, I'm just conscious of time as well, because you might need to crack on. I know how busy you are.
Thank you. So
thinking about the book again, I know there's 100 tips, but
tell you what, it wasn't easy getting to 100 tips.
Oh, yeah.
By the time I got to about 90, I was running out of ideas.
See tip 5 again.
Yeah.
So what are the ones that really stand out to you? You know, what's the ones that you think, oh yeah, you know, that's the top 3 or the top 5?
Oh, that's a very challenging question now you're asking me to remember. Well, I mean, I've mentioned some of them already. I mean, I would always talk about starting everything with thinking about the customer. Yep. So understanding who those most important segments of customers are. I mean, most businesses have a Pareto effect, right? Where 80% of the sales are driven by 20% of the customers.
Yeah.
Who are those 20%?
Yeah.
You know, what do they look like?
Yeah.
You know, what demographic are they? Because there's probably 3 or 4 core personas or cohorts of customers that make up that 20%. And if you know that, then you can do a great job of delivering the right experience. You can do a great job of retaining them, of driving their lifetime value, of getting them to come back, but also finding more people like that. Who are the lookalikes, you know, that share those same demographics and other characteristics. So that's always got to be the starting point. Never, ever, ever, ever start with the technology. And I still see too many businesses doing that. I know there are some people might disagree with that, but I just think that if you start with the tech, yes, you might get lucky and you might design something phenomenal, but the chances are, again, I go back to Uber, you know, the example of them, you know, did they really start by thinking about, you know, I could create some technology, you know, that would be able to do this really differently? Or did they just fundamentally understand the frustration that consumers go through or customers go through when they're trying to order a taxi? I'm pretty confident it's more the latter. So those would be 2 of my hot tips. Definitely focus on retention. You know, at the end of the day, it's great. You've got to bring new people in the door. We all have churn, right? And you can't avoid that. But you've got to focus on bringing people back. It's much more cost effective to retain a customer than it is to recruit one. Therefore, why wouldn't you invest in that? You know, if you, honestly, Mark, and you'll know this from your own experience, if you went across the top 1,000 facing consumer brands in the UK in all different verticals, so car brands, banks, retailers, restaurant groups, you'll find that probably something like 30 or 40, maybe 50% have a job title of head of customer acquisition. You'll find that less than 1% have a job title of head of customer retention. And that kind of tells you really everything you need to know. The focus is on the top of the funnel and it's not on bringing people back. It's not on lifetime value. And that I just don't understand. I really don't get it.
And so what's the future looking like for you then?
Future for me? Well, yes, so I'm going to be leaving Practicology in a couple of weeks. So as of 7th of January, I'm going to be doing something new. I'm certainly going to keep my relationship with the business. I'm going to stay on as a board advisor. I have some shares in the overall group now, so I'll certainly be keeping a keen eye on the business and hoping they move in the right direction. But for me, I'm certainly going to be focusing around the book. I think there's a really good opportunity to take the core content and make it available for e-learning. So I'm going to work with a partner to chunk the content up and make it available to download as modules from an e-learning point of view. I've got an inkling there might be a gap in the market for a conference relating to, again, the subject matter of the book, but delivered in a slightly different way from the way most of our traditional conferences are. Something more practical, yes, where people can come along and be very, very aware of the fact that they will leave with a lot of actionable insights, stuff that they can actually make a difference to their business the next day. So I'd like to do that. I've got an idea for possibly taking some of the content in my ugly mug onto broadcast, not just podcast, but maybe TV. I probably will get round to having a YouTube channel at some point in time. So there's a whole lot of stuff around that. I already do a bit of advisory work, probably build on that, and then we'll just see what falls out of all the coffees I'm going to have in the new year.
Actually take a holiday.
That as well. I'm off to Bangkok over Christmas with my family.
Good.
So looking forward to that. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, well, listen, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We could have talked for hours. It was great to
We
catch
could
up.
indeed.
Anyway, and
we haven't even had a beer yet.
Oh, yeah, silly. But listen, I wish you well for
Thank
2019
Likewise.
and beyond. And yes, the 100 Practical Way man,
Thank you.
Martin Newman, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Cheers,
Thanks
mate.
for having me.
Thank you. So there you have it. So much amazing practical advice about how you can make your company customer first. Again, to give you the name of that book is 100 Practical Ways to Improve Customer Experience, and that's from Martin Newman and Malcolm MacDonald. An incredible textbook that can help anyone, whether you're studying, whether you're in a junior role, a senior role, or leading a business, or even starting up your own business. This is gold in terms of how you can really put the customer at the heart of every single thing that you do. A huge thanks also to all of you who have been listening throughout the year, rating, reviewing, subscribing, and telling one friend about the Spectacular Marketing Podcast. We're so chuffed and so happy that we're managing to get into the top 100 most weeks about Business iTunes, and also the listenership on Spotify's going up. We're starting to put out the videos through YouTube. So holistically, there's a lot of people hopefully getting great value from the Spectacular Marketing Podcast. A huge thanks also to Gaz and Gabby in terms of the exec production and all of their hard work in putting the Spectacular Marketing Podcast together. I'm Mark McCulloch, and this was Spectacular.